armyworm is and when it was first discovered in the country, and we'll take a look at this now. And so the pest, which was originated from South America, can destroy more than 30 different types of crops and are active mostly during the night. And this was first discovered in Africa in 2016, September 2016, in different countries across the continent, and Kenya just being one of them. Now, the situation in Kenya is dire. In the country's food basket, and that is the North Rift region, more than 200,000 acres of farmland in that region have been affected, and that is 20% of the farms in the county. This is not a small number, considering that this really is the country's food basket. Many call it the country's grain basket or the bread basket, but 20% is quite an alarming number. Now, this translates to an estimated 50 million shilling loss from the North Rift region alone. And areas of Tarbo in Uasin Gishu County have been the worst hit since the region, with the pest having the capacity to destroy 100% of the crop. And this is also very alarming. 100% crop destruction rather, can lead to a worse situation in terms of food security. And this is not the first time, really, that we're seeing such a loss in the North Rift region, but we'll get to that in just a moment. And other counties that have been affected, 25 counties in the country so far. We have the likes of Bungoma, Kakamega, Uasin Gishu, Trans Nzoia, Busia, Nandi, Kericho, Baringo and Nakuru, among others. But these are the most affected counties in the country. And remember that apart from being very difficult to control, the fall armyworm can actually not only destroy maize, but 30 other types of crops in the country. So that, again, causing quite an alarm there. Crops like rice, even pasture for animals, can be destroyed by the fall armyworm. And so as we speak, a lot of research going on. This is a new pest in the country and in the continent, so research is still going on. But farmers as now have been urged to report any armyworm sighting to agricultural extension officers. And this is very, very difficult for farmers, even in the North Rift region. Many who say that they did not budget for this in their annual budget. As it stands, just one belt of the pesticide, which can deal with this, can spray 12.5 acres, but it costs 22,000 shillings. And that is quite a bit of money for farmers who had not budgeted for that in their annual budgets. And so this is what I was talking about earlier. In 2015, farmers lost more than 260,000 hectares of maize crop valued at 2 billion shillings to invasion by the viral maize lethal necrosis in parts of Rift Valley. And that was just 2 years ago. We are already feeling the impact, or still feeling the impact of this in the country, with the shortage in food, which has not only been caused by the drought, but also by that in 2015. And then in 2016, we also saw the effect of that, with maize production in Rift Valley dropping from 21 million bags to 16 million bags. And the situation might be even worse this year if the armyworm invasion is not stopped. Now remember, 200,000 plus acres in the Rift Valley have already been affected by the fall armyworm. And so how much worse can the situation get this year? Remember, the country is still reeling from the effects of the drought. Slightly more than 3 million Kenyans on the brink of dire food malnutrition. And so what is the government and concerned authorities are doing in terms of fighting the fall armyworm, but also what is the state of research in the country? So in studio this morning, we will be speaking to Dr. Zachary Kinyua, who is a member of the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. And we also have Dr. James Nyoro, who is a food security expert and also a running mate to the Jubilee gubernatorial candidate in Kiambu County. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us on the Dawn debate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. James Nyoro, let's begin with you. Is this a national disaster, as farmers in the North Rift say?
Well, I think it is. I sometimes do not understand when people say declare it a national disaster. But the fact of the matter is it is a national disaster for two reasons. One, when it rains, it pours. It just started off with us coming out of a very dire situation in terms of food security. And then, of course, the rains have not been very good. and then we have this infestation of armyworm. So as far as the food situation in the country is concerned, it calls for a lot of seriousness. But the other thing is that this is an army. The word says is army worm.
Right.
Army means that it requires military precision. It requires us. This is not an individual farmer response. It's a national response. Because we need to stop, we need to have a belt where we stop any further spread of the army. I don't know, and the gentleman, Kenya, is here from Karo to tell us, but it is such a serious situation that if it is not stopped, I think the food situation at the end of this year and the beginning of next year is going to be worse than this year.
All right, Dr. Kinyua, how serious is this situation, especially because it's the first time that we're having such a pest infestation in the country and even the continent, and so there's not much research that has been done?
When you hear there is a national outcry by farmers and members of the public, definitely we can say the matter is very serious. And having affected so many counties, especially in our green basket, we can consider it to be a very serious problem, the fall armyworm attack.
Right.
Yes.
What is the state of research as we speak? I understand that research in the country began as soon as the first sighting was done, but how far are we?
That's right. We start by first diagnosing or identifying the problem so that you know how to attack it. Definitely you cannot attack an enemy until you have understood that enemy. That much we have done, but there are still some gaps in knowledge, because this is a newly introduced pest early this year, and therefore there are still some gaps in knowledge, and we are trying to study it. And some of the things we've done is to find out which methods of control are appropriate. And we have also trained farmers and agricultural extension officers in counties on how to identify the problem and how to start attacking the fall armyworm. Yes.
Now, the fall armyworm has the capacity of causing 100% crop destruction. Dr. Nyoro, what impact would that have, not just on food security, but the overall economy?
Well, just like you had stated in your opening remarks, that by the time farmers get to June, they have no money left. Because remember, farmers plant in April. And after planting, the only thing that they wait for sometimes is money for top dressing. They apply fertilizer and they wait for the harvest. So this is coming at a time when farmers do not have any money at all to do the control. Like if you indicated there, the cost individually per farmer is extremely high. And not only that, this is a problem where even if you control your own farm, the next farm is going to be affected. And if it is affected, it will affect back your farm. And therefore, it requires a very coordinated effort. So the financial implications are huge, just like the figures that you are showing. Just look at the 200,000 hectares that you are talking about. Just imagine that you probably get about 60 bags per hectare. You are obviously talking about in excess of 10 million bags loss.
Right.
That is if you don't get 100% loss. If you get 50% loss, and like you have shown there, North Rift produces about 21 million bags. You are talking about half of that in a situation where right now we are importing maize. So it's such a bad situation. We all need to come together. It's not a national, it's not a county government issue. It's not a farmer issue. It's actually a national government coordinating with a county government issue. Karo is doing a fantastic job because this is it's a new problem, like they're saying. But there are two things I would want to say as an expert in food security. The first one is, I think we are noticing increasingly that this country is getting infested with new pests and diseases. The maize rhizonecrotic disease, the one that you've talked about, has been new in this country. It's a viral problem, it has been new. Now we're having this armyworm, it's a Southern African armyworm coming into Kenya. The first thing that we want to ask ourselves is, how strong is our phytosanitary protection? If you go to the US, if you have traveled to the US, you know how difficult it is to introduce a single agricultural product into that country. So one of the things that we need to ask ourselves beyond this armyworm problem is, how strong is our phytosanitary? By phytosanitary, I mean when you get to the airport, when you get to the borders, how easy is it to introduce agricultural materials into the country and out of the country?
And just before you continue, maybe let's just hear from Dr. Kinyua on that. How strong is it?
Well, I would like to start by agreeing with Dr. Nyoro that this is it requires a national approach. And one of the things that the government has done is to put together institutions that can brainstorm and take action. CARO is one of the institutions. KEFIS, which is in charge of phytosanitary services, is the other institution which is in that team. We have the Pest Control Products Board. We also have the Plant Protection Services Division. And we also have international research partners like ICIPE and the CIMIT, who are in that team. And this is the team that is advancing the information to the farmers, to the county governments. And I also want to say that much as it requires a national approach, we also know that each contribution from any party counts. And we would like to say food security starts with the farmer. It starts with the other stakeholders in the farming realm. And this is to say we cannot leave it to the national government alone. We know that the county governments have taken action. We have listened to the Chief Officer of Trans Nzoia saying what they have done. We also know what the Kakamega County government has done. And we also know that the individual farmers are also taking action out of their own initiatives and out of what we have given them as information.
Now, that being said, farmers are complaining that it's very expensive for this. They did not budget for this. And like I showed there, just the cost of the pesticide, because the armyworm seems to be resistant to most of the pesticides that are available. The cost of the particular pesticide that can deal with them, or can at least keep them at bay, is rather expensive. So what options do farmers have who cannot afford that? Well,
I would like to say that the management of fall armyworm requires an integrated approach. It's not just the pesticides. Pesticides are one of the options. And we also have monitoring using pheromone traps, so that when you detect the fall armyworm in your fields, you are able to take action early enough. There's also the farming practices, where some farmers plant off-season maize crops, and these are breeding grounds for future plantings. We also have farmers who actually plant very late after all the others have planted. The fall armyworms are going to shift from the main cropping to their late planted crop.
Right.
So actually farming practices are one, use of pheromone traps and monitoring and detection. Then you come to the pesticides. Now, you talk of resistance. I would like to say that it's a bit too early as far as Kenya is concerned, to talk of resistance to pesticides. This is because we have not had this problem for a long time. Research is still going on, and hardly have we gone through one season for us to say that the pest is resistant to pesticides. One of the things I would like to clarify here is that the way you apply the pesticides is very important. You realize that it is very active at night and in the evenings. When you spray during daylight,
which makes it even more difficult to sight.
That's right.
To see.
No. If you are applying a pesticide of your choice and you apply it late in the evening, let's say from 4 p.m. or the way maybe up to 7, it will come into contact with the pest and it will kill it as it goes about its feeding errands at night. So that's one of the targeting methods that you need to apply. Right. When do you apply? Then we also talk of applying alternating pesticides, not just one, so that if it happens that one is targeting one particular stage of development of the pest, the other one will target the other one. Right. And then we also talk of multiple spraying, follow-up sprays. If you just spray once, like I understand that the county government of Trans Nzoia had money for one round of sprays. Right. And if you don't have follow-up sprays, the eggs that are not affected by the pesticides will hatch into the larvae, the caterpillars. Much as you have killed the first round of caterpillars, the second generation of caterpillars from the eggs that are not affected will still come up. Right. And therefore, the way you apply pesticides is very, very critical. Then, we have talked of some pesticides which are very expensive. We know of successes and failures by individual farmers. And our researchers are also doing pesticide evaluation trials in Trans Nzoia. Right. I have a team doing that. And we know that it depends on the dose you apply, and also the timing, as I've just said, and also the pesticide you choose. Some of them are relatively cheap or affordable. It's not necessarily that the most effective pesticide is the one you go for, which might be very expensive. Right. You can go for a less effective pesticide in terms of the dosage, but make sure that you do the proper timing, as I've just explained earlier.
And that is very incisive, and we'll get back to that. I'm sure there's so many questions already coming in on social media. But Dr. Nyoro, let's now look at the math in terms of the bags produced in the country's food basket, like you mentioned, just an average of about 21 million bags annually. Now, in 2015, when there was the maize lethal necrosis, that came down to about 16 million bags. And that was just 2 years ago. And the situation we're seeing now, and by then it was about 260,000 hectares that were destroyed. As we speak, we already have 200,000 plus, and the number is rising. And we already have the drought situation in the country. We're already importing food. What options does Kenya have in maintaining food security, considering that even importing food from COMESA states now will be difficult because they also have an armyworm infestation? Our neighbors like Uganda and Tanzania also have an armyworm infestation. So where does Kenya begin in ensuring food security for the 3 million plus Kenyans in
Well,
dire
I think the government is doing a fantastic job so far. If what we were told that the second shipment of maize from Mexico came in on 28th, and the third shipment is coming in. What we see is our monthly consumption of maize is about 3 million bags. So if you look at the next 3 months, which is June, July, August, that's just probably about 9 million bags. We are expecting some harvest to start coming in from Southern Lift, areas of Bomet and Oitoktok and the others. So that will reduce the import. I think overall, we will expect to continue importing, but we need to be very careful and monitor up to about September. And we need to reduce the import then and do a very, very close monitoring and evaluation of the situation that Kenya is talking about. We need to have a team, not just the team that is controlling the armyworm invasion. We need to have a team that is monitoring the impact, because this is nationwide, by the way. It hasn't come out of North Rift. It is actually in central Kenya. 25
counties have been affected.
It is actually now in Kiambu, as we talk. Some parts of Ondide and Kikuyu, the armyworm is there. Even the arid parts of Ndeyakarai, the armyworm is there. So we need to have a team that monitors, because we need to do this carefully, because we don't want to, again, import and depress the domestic market. So that's why we need to monitor, so that by September, we know very well how much we have and how much we have brought in. We now estimate, because going by the figures that you are talking about, remember, the maize is just at the tasseling stage. So that is a very, very, very sensitive stage. We need to know over the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks what the impact would be. And then we can evaluate and say, if our national production is about 38, 39 million bags, if this comes down to 20 million bags, it means that we will have a deficit of 20 million bags, starting next year. And we need to start, like I said, military style. We need now to start thinking about what happens to the short trains. Okay, we start planning from November. We need to start thinking about even areas that are not conventionally producing maize. The question is, are we doing something in Bura irrigation scheme? Are we doing something in West Pokot? Are we doing something in, all of these other irrigation schemes? So we need to act in a military style so that we move away from where the invasion is into areas where by next year we can probably reduce the gap. And I'm happy to learn that the government has already increased in the supplementary estimates. They have already put in mechanisms to import 1 million bags for national strategic reserves. So what I'm saying is, it requires a very well-coordinated effort by the team that is controlling the problem, but also the team that is monitoring the amount of maize and the amount of food that we are not only eating and importing, but also what we are going to produce.
All right, and I'd like us to come back to the irrigation projects in just a moment. But Dr. Kenywa, when did research in the country begin surrounding the fall armyworm?
Well, research starts with observation. And the first time we observed the fall armyworm in Kenya was in March, although for it to be detected, it must have been here slightly earlier for it to build to populations that were detectable. Right, so research started that time.
How integrated are researchers, not just in Kenya? Because we know you cannot do things on your own. How connected are they? Because this first came to light 9 months ago in September 2016 in West Africa. And so one would have expected that maybe with that interconnectedness, there would be conversations, and other countries in East Africa would start forward planning and preparing for that. Was there anything of the sort? And would you say that is something that needs to be done by researchers in the country?
Well, apart from the national team that I've just talked about, we also have an African network. About 3 weeks ago in April, There were 2 back-to-back meetings at one of the hotels in Nairobi, and we had all the countries that have been affected or reported to be affected by fall armyworm in Africa. We had started with a meeting by Southern African countries because that's where they started their research earlier, and we are in the know of what they are doing, and we are exchanging notes. So there is a big network of East African countries and Africa as a whole.
Right.
Okay. Could I say something on that? And you know, he's right, because ICP is an international organization, so it's cutting across. But I think increasingly we are seeing new viral problems coming in. We are seeing new infestations coming in. And we are seeing interconnectedness between ourselves, Southern America, and Asia. I remember when I was working for the Gates Foundation, we do the map of Africa, and we said that we are going to look for resources to ensure that maize-lethal necrotic diseases does not come from Eastern Africa to Western Africa. So there needs to be a lot of coordinated effort, not just by the national and the regional institutions. Because if we knew that this is a problem in Southern America, we should have gone to South America to study it, because it could be our problem. So it requires a lot of coordinated effort. It requires a lot of foresighting. It requires a lot of people coming together from the problems that we are affecting ourselves now and the ones we will anticipate tomorrow.
All right, and just why this new phenomenon of these new viral pests and infestations coming up?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. He is. But one of it is, like I said, trade. Problems. You see, what happens is that if a new virus or a new worm gets out of its own natural ecology, where it is used to be controlled by its own enemies, it gets to a new environment introduced through trade. Like, for instance, it could have been some eggs in some maize that was imported from Brazil. It gets to a country where it does not have natural enemies. When it gets to a country where it does not have natural enemies, the tendency is for it to expand faster than the environment where it is used to be. So trade, and that's why I was talking about very, very strong phytosanitary regulations.
Right. All right. Dr. Kenya, your final words as we wind up.
I would first of all say that the world is a global village, and trade is one of the routes through which pests can come into our country. The other one is just negligence, and maybe somebody just doing something which is unwarranted, like through unofficial routes of coming in. We are looking into rules and regulations and policies. But final word is that all is not lost. Going by the history of maize-lethal necrosis disease, we did not get 100% loss. We are also not expecting 100% loss from fall armyworm, because interventions are in place, only that we need to really up our game in terms of how watertight those interventions are, so that we lose less from the fall armyworm.
Right,
definitely there will be losses.
Just a quick recap of what more farmers can do just to take care of the situation themselves. You did mention this earlier. A lot of consistency in the spraying. What else can farmers do?
Well, early detection, I said, and one of the key things is that the pest is more sensitive to pesticides, or gets killed much more easily when it is in its earliest stages. As the caterpillar grows bigger and matures towards pupa and the adult, it becomes less sensitive to pesticides. So early detection and intervention and the right timing is key, much as we also talk about the planting practices and the other methods that I've just mentioned, like use of pheromone traps.
All right, Dr. Nyoro, final words.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that Caro is doing. They are doing a fantastic job. What we need to do is we need to have better coordination between the national and the county governments. I think increasingly, not just in armyworm, even in health, what we are hearing about nurses is it's not the problem of the Jubilee government as such. It is lack of coordination between the national government and the county government. They go sign on something, they are not aware whether the money is there or not. It is the same thing. The coordination between the counties themselves, the Uasin Gishu, Trans Nzoia, because this problem is there, but also how coordinated are they with the national government? One of the questions you ask yourself is, has there been a meeting between the national government and the Council of Governors to discuss the armyworm? It may not have been there. So we need to have a very, very strong coordination mechanism and realize that these are not problems that are relating to the county governments. They are problems that relate to the country called Kenya.
All right. Many thanks, gentlemen, for joining us on our dawn debate focused on food security in the wake of the fall armyworm infestation. We've been speaking to Dr. James Nyoro, who is a food security expert, but he is also the running mate to the Jubilee gubernatorial candidate in Kiambu County. And we've also been speaking to Dr. Zachary Kinyua from the Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research Organization. Many thanks, gentlemen. And that conversation brings us to a break here on Morning Express and a close to the dawn debate, of course. But do stay with us when we come back. More news